Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, and beyond. And tonight, in a special report, what's up with the sex industry in the United States? What is the sex industry in the United States? And what about the decriminalization of the sex industry in the United States? Well, for many people, the idea of legalized sex in America sends shivers through their spine. Surely, the moral majority would vote no. Well, as you will see, there's a lot more to the sex industry and the idea of the decriminalization of the sex industry that we probably don't know enough about, and tonight, we're going to learn something about it. Here joining me is an advocate for the decriminalization of the sex industry in the United States. Please welcome to our show, Mr. Larry Grant. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I feel very honored to be here.
Well, thank you very much. The sex industry in the United States, it's broad, it's confusing to a lot of viewers because they really don't know all of the components of the sex industry. What is the sex industry in the United States?
Well, it's huge. It's not really different than the sex industry in any other part of the world. It probably what people first think of is prostitution, but the sex industry also includes workers in pornography, both the actors and also the behind-the-scenes people. It includes exotic dancers, strippers, if you like to call them that. Mm-hmm. It includes those who work in the phone sex business. Mm-hmm. And it includes folks that work in the more exotic parts of the sex world, the S&M trade, dominatrixes, and so on.
So it's a pretty broad and wide spectrum.
It's very diverse, and it's huge.
Right.
There are millions of people in this country that make their living one way or another in the sex industry.
And after all, it is the world's oldest profession, to coin a phrase.
Well, it's a cliche.
A cliche, yeah. How true it is, we really don't know. In other countries, okay, in Holland, they have had the great experiment, shall we say, where they have had the decriminalization of the sex industry. In Holland, the prostitutes, the sex workers are monitored by the government. There are certain, they have to have an AIDS test every 6 weeks. It's quite strict, but for some reason in Holland it works. Now, in America, we only have Nevada as an example. What can you tell us about the sex industry in Nevada and what's going on there? What's up with that?
Yeah, usually when folks talk about legalization or decriminalization, they use Nevada as the example. But I don't think Nevada is what we should use as a paradigm of changes in prostitution laws.
Because of
the situations for the workers, who are, by the way, all women. There are no male sex workers in Nevada's brothels, so right away that leaves out a large part of the prostitution population, which are male prostitutes. Mm-hmm. But there's just a lack of civil rights among those who work in the Nevada's brothels. When a woman goes in to work in one of these places, she really gives up almost all of her rights. Mm. She's not allowed to live a normal community life, a normal social life. She has to transact her business under a very tight regimen of rules. And many women who go into the sex industry do it to get away from that kind of regimen and routine that make so many jobs a unpleasant drudgery.
Well, okay, an example here recently in San Jose, a massage parlor was closed by the Vice Squad because they claimed that the workers, and this is how the media played it out, were sex slaves. Is that the way you would perceive something going on in Nevada, that it's almost so controlled that it's
No, I would draw a distinction between an extremely exploitative situation where women are forced to work as prostitutes, which does happen, or where they're controlled by a violent pimp who takes their money and doesn't let them keep their own the fruit of their own labor.
Right.
What the Nevada situation, they're not slaves, I wouldn't say, but it's not the optimum way to arrange sex workers. I think rather than a legalization scheme where in effect the state becomes the madam, what you want is a decriminalization where you simply get rid of the laws against prostitution. And what would happen is a lot of the abuses that exist now would be eliminated once those who work in the sex industry would be free to go to the police if they had a problem.
Right.
So the element of choice would come into it much more strongly, and only so you could those who wanted to do other things that would rather be go into another line of work, the money that's freed up from not chasing down prostitutes and with the vice squad anymore, that could go into job training. That could go into housing and battered women's shelters and various socially useful.
Okay. Well, you mentioned before about the abuses. Okay. Now, when we see films, when we read the newspaper, when we see interviews, there seems to be a lot of issue brought about abuses in the sex industry. Abuses such as pimps, like you said, drugs, this kind of stuff. How true is this? Is this?
It is very true, but it's only one aspect, and often the critics of prostitution and sex work pretend like that's the whole story, and it's not the whole story, because there are many people that go into sex work quite consciously as a way as a alternative to many other kinds of jobs that are more unpleasant. Like a lot of people feel that office work is something that's constraining, this a deadening routine, and many people like to use their body as part of their work, or they enjoy making other people happy. For those kind of people, sex work is a real bona fide occupation.
So how did you then become interested in this decriminalization process? I know you work with Coyote, and for those viewers who don't know who Coyote is an organization for the betterment of the life of prostitutes, started by Margot St. James. What's in it for you?
Well, I've been interested in sexual politics since I was an adolescent back in the early 70s, when there was an extreme fomentation of politics and sex. As you remember, the whole hippie movement, those things seemed to be intertwined with each other.
The free love and the whole
radical politics and the free love seem to go together. And so I've always been interested in sexual politics. I've always been interested in seeing women being strong and independent, and also seeing men as being in responsible relationships and not these unconscious destructive relationships that so many people seem to get in. And more specifically, in the last few years, I have a girlfriend that's one of the leaders of the movement to decriminalize prostitution. So I have a personal connection with it also.
Well, okay. You go home or you talk to your friends or whatever, and your position is not one that everyone's going to agree with, of course. I'm sure you've...
So most people do. That may surprise you.
It actually does surprise me, because I would think that the reaction, if you were to go up to somebody and say, well, I'm working towards the decriminalization of the sex industry. And remember, you got to understand about the sex industry, you know, we're not only talking about prostitution, we're talking about pornography, we're talking about cases in pornography again, where, you know, there's been stories, and there have been stories, haunting stories of how young women, some of them not even 18, been drugged. This might be media hype, but this is what the audience perceives. So your job then, as the person who is going to be the one who is going to be the advocate, is to respond how? Someone comes up to you and says, okay, well, what about all this stuff? There's a lot of garbage going on about this. Someone says this person did this, you know, what do you say to them?
Well, first of all, let's be clear what we're talking about. When we talk about decriminalization, we're talking specifically about prostitution. In this country, all other forms of sex work pretty much are legitimate. Now certainly there are struggles in some of the other areas, like the dancers have their struggles, and there's a union movement going on among dancers now. But when we're talking about legalization or decriminalization, we're talking specifically about prostitution, and I believe that's the most important area. I think pornography is already in many ways above board. The businesses, it's done completely legally, and I'd like to see prostitution happen in the same way.
Out of curiosity, what kind of money is involved in this industry?
Well, the money, you know, it's not that individuals are becoming rich necessarily, but the sex industry is a huge industry, and I can't give you figures, but I believe it's one of the largest service industries in the country.
Okay, well, we're going to cut to a video clip here, and the video clip is taken on the street, asking people what their opinion is on this feeling. So we're going to take a look at a video clip right now.
I think it should be legal because to each his own, or her own, or their own, or whatever. I think prostitution should be legal because if it's legal, then there won't be so much AIDS or diseases around, because the government will have more control over it, and plus people are going to do it anyway because you need money, and sometimes that's the only way they can think of getting money.
My name's Beth, and I think that prostitution shouldn't be legalized. Although I can see the benefits to how if it were legalized, it would kind of regulate it, but I still think that it's wrong. Just like I'm against the legalization of marijuana, I just think that it's wrong and it shouldn't be legalized.
What I think about prostitution, if it was legalized, I think that it'd be a lot cleaner and safer, and it would just be a more controlled thing.
There are many people that are for and many people that are against the decriminalization of the sex industry. Many people believe that it's morally wrong. How do you respond to those people who believe that by decriminalizing the sex industry, you are somehow perpetuating some type of immorality or naughtiness?
I think most people in this country, when they talk against sex work, what they're expressing is their own personal qualms, that it's something that they wouldn't like to do, or they wouldn't like to see their daughter or sister do that.
No, I don't.
And that's
doubt that. Yeah.
And that's quite, and I share those feelings, and that it's quite legitimate. But many of the same people do not like to see prostitutes harassed as they try to do their business. So I think there are a few people that are more stalwart in their opposition, and the two main areas that comes from is the religious right, and the reactionary anti sex feminists. The religious right fears sex work because they think it's destructive to the family. But in my view, and I'm a Christian, by the way, and to what I see as being most destructive to the family is the repression of our natural sexuality. That's far more socially destructive.
Right. Well, what about the sex worker and their family? Surely in Coyote and these other organizations, they have to they must deal with a lot of counseling regarding people who have been, from my understanding, tossed out of their families because of their given profession, their chosen profession, shall I say. What do you think about, the worker in this case? How would the decriminalization of this help in a situation like that?
Well, I think a lot of that would shake out if there was decriminalization, because the people that don't want to do it wouldn't have to do it. And we could get help for them. Like I was saying earlier, you could get them job training.
Okay,
you could get them into domestic violence shelters and so on.
So, but when you say then that they don't want to do it, okay, you're suggesting that a lot of people are forced into this profession? Is that what I'm getting at?
Well, it's multidimensional. Many people are forced into it. Also, there are people who have chosen the profession but work under conditions that they did not make and don't like.
Right, and some of those conditions would be like a bad pimp. Are there cases of them being abused or beaten up and that kind of stuff?
Well, the problems, the problems are just legion. On the, of course, the most criminal side, there are those who are simply forced into it or severely exploited by a pimp. A pimp can be a woman too, by the way.
Of course, it's the 90s.
But it can also be simply working in a bad environment, working on the streets in a neighborhood that's dangerous because prostitution is illegal. If prostitution was legal, it would all be above board, and it wouldn't be associated so closely with other crimes.
Yeah.
And the police could clean up a neighborhood in cooperation with the prostitutes rather than being at odds with them.
So then, do you think that in the United States, the prostitutes are severely harassed by the police? Are they degraded by the public? Or, what is their status?
Almost all the problems associated with prostitution are a result of anti-prostitution laws. Almost all of it could be alleviated by decriminalization.
Okay, and what specifically then is the anti-prostitution law? You do the crime, you pay the fine or whatever. How severe is this of a crime?
Well, it's not much of a crime, and there are there's very few people that actually do jail time or pay large fines. But what it does do is clog our courts, and it costs the taxpayers a tremendous amount of their taxes go into an absolutely futile chasing down of prostitutes by the Vice Squad. As an example, in
somebody's peddling drugs on the corner, right?
Well, there's real crimes. Well, I think drugs should be decriminalized too. But there are real crimes going on, crimes of violence and so on. And to give San Francisco as an example, by the estimate made by the task force on prostitution appointed by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, about $8 million a year is spent on the enforcement of prostitution laws. That's not a total figure. That's just the part that can be easily calculated. There's also hidden cost that we don't know, the cost it has in individuals' lives, lost wages and so on. But just the part we know, $8 million a year. in taxpayers' money goes into the enforcement of prostitution laws, almost every cent of that is wasted. The people get nothing back from that. What they get for that $8 million are neighborhoods that are not safe. The prostitution laws are wrecking whole neighborhoods in San Francisco. It's made formerly beautiful neighborhoods like the Mission District into hellholes.
Right. So by decriminalizing it, what are the advantages then in making your neighborhood safer, or making, you know, this whole situation, the scenario that you've built for me, improve?
Well, it's not a magic bullet. It won't solve all the problems, but what it does do, the most important thing about decriminalization is it frees up a lot of resources that can be devoted to other worthy causes. A lot of the money that's now spent on enforcement, which is absolutely wasted, which accomplishes nothing, and which doesn't prevent prostitution, which only makes the situation of the prostitutes and their clients more dangerous, and also for the people that live in those neighborhoods, makes their lives very unpleasant. That money that's now spent on enforcement could be channeled into, as I mentioned earlier, drug treatment programs, into shelters for battered women, into job training programs, and many other socially useful projects. Rather than on this endless and absolutely futile chasing after prostitutes.
I understand that, and it makes perfect sense. I wonder, though, about the issue of this exploitation. How can this be solved? Is there a good answer? Okay.
Yes, again, by decriminalization.
Okay.
Because the other advantage of decriminalization, in addition to the reallocation of resources, is also it gets everything above board. So that if a prostitute has a problem, if someone is harassing her, someone is threatening her, if she's been the victim of violence, she can go directly to the police. And the police and the prostitutes can work together.
Right, which right now she just run away as fast as she could, right?
That's right. In effect, tragically, what we see now is that police, instead of being helpers of prostitutes and their friends, are actually among their exploiters. And many prostitutes have been murdered and raped by policemen. And many have been exploited. The policemen will exchange a sexual service to let them go. That happens every day. And so police become the exploiters of prostitutes, along with the pimps and the violent clients.
So rather than serving
those
the
that are
public,
violent, they're not all violent, I should say.
So your point being, rather than serving the public what they're supposed to be doing, they're actually adding to a problem that's already, as you've described, pretty difficult right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any impact on getting rid of prostitution. It only makes it more dangerous and less healthy.
For prostitutes or sex workers right now, what kind of resources are available in the community for them if they can't go to the police? Do they have any legal rights? Do they have any support groups? Do they have any place where they can go, where they have any oomph? I mean, is there any place where they can go where somebody can actually make a difference for them? They have a complaint. They say their pimp is beating them up all the time. Do they have any place to go, or are they just left out?
There are some organizations that are providing services for prostitutes that have legal problems, that have had unfortunate experiences with the police. There are also prostitutes among themselves are organizing to deal with some of the other problems. The problems of that certain certain clients, tricks, as some folks like to call them, are violent or terrorize or rob the prostitutes. Prostitutes that should be something the police deal with, but in lieu of that, prostitutes are organizing among themselves to deal with that. They're passing out pictures of some of these violent tricks. And in many other ways are organizing among themselves to help each other. But there are some resources. There are some resources for those who want to leave the profession. Unfortunately, at this point, most of those who help prostitutes get out of prostitution are people who are ideologically opposed to sex work.
Okay, I understand. So, if we make this decriminalized, then we make it into an industry, I guess.
It's already an industry. It's a huge industry.
Right, but we make it a legal, decriminalized industry. How do you perceive prostitution changing as a decriminalized industry? Do we mean that we're going to have brothels in San Jose? Are we going to have, what's going to be the effect 5 years from now?
Well, now, okay, when I'm saying this is my opinion. Not everyone this part is very controversial, and some of the other things I said are controversial. But what I think and even among the friends of sex workers, there are many issues that we debate. But what I would like to see is it all off the streets.
The danger zone. Right.
Yes, because the problem comes in street prostitution. So I would like to see massage parlors and brothels. They don't have to be gaudy. They don't have to be garish in their neighborhoods. They can be very discreet.
Right.
And this will be both good for the sex workers, also good for the tricks, and also good for the neighborhoods. These neighborhoods that are suffering so much under the current anti-sex work hysteria.
All right. Okay, well, that's all the time that we have for the show. It goes by pretty fast. Thank you very much for coming on the show and informing our audience about the decriminalization of prostitution. Good luck in your adventures. And if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody.